All right, let's go now to something that I know will worry you. This is whether you get a say in what's built on your land or in your local community, because more and more, if it relates to massive renewables infrastructure, you don't. In Victoria, there's been a massive change in the planning laws and it's stripped away rights from farmers and regional communities. Mark my words though, what's happening in Victoria is on its way to a state near you. Joining me now to discuss this, the Australian's Environment Editor, Graham Lloyd. Well, Michael Buxton, he's a planning expert at RMIT and I've spoken to him on this program. He said this is a conflict with the government. It's got a priority to roll out this big green agenda. At the same time, it's taking away the say local people have on these proposals and bringing it into government. I mean, how can the left hand, which wants one thing, be measured by the right hand? It doesn't work like this, Graham.
That's right. Good evening, Peter. Look, it's fair to say that there has always been an authoritarian bent in the whole climate movement, and they've obviously found a good friend in the Victorian government. We're seeing here a frustration that high targets have been sent to roll out renewables and they're simply not being met for a whole load of reasons. So the first thing that goes is the sort of civil rights, if you like, of people who might stand in the way. They've done away with the planning process. There were objections to projects to the planning authorities. It slowed things down. Now it's all going to be decided by the minister, which is a really worrying trend, but it's probably only representative of a much bigger authoritarian push that's coming.
This is like a communist country. I mean, you don't get a right as a farmer anymore or as a resident of a country town to complain about something that's going to forever change your community.
Well, that's certainly the way this is playing out, and it has a lot to do with central planning, doesn't it? That you have a vision of how something should be and you start to take it out on people when it doesn't actually appear that way.
What about these plans too? They're also in Victoria, surprise, surprise, that will give traditional owners, so Aboriginal Victorians, the same rights as land managers of something like Parks Victoria.
Well, there's certainly discussions underway about how to give greater rights to Indigenous communities over land that traditionally has been administered by the state. Now, it's working on a couple of levels. One is, look, Indigenous people are good land managers, there are good environmental outcomes, but immediately the discussion goes to the almost $2 billion that's collected over a decade with regard to fees on pastoral properties and other leasehold titles. This is really the focus of these discussions. And if you look at what happened in Western Australia in terms of restrictions on land use, there needs to be very careful where this ends up.
And also the access of ordinary people to these parks and, you know, climbing mountains and all the other facilities we can see around the country now are being tightened and access changing on the back of Indigenous advice. Let's go quickly. Tesla and its Chinese rival BYD, they've both seen a massive slump in sales, not to mention Tesla announcing 14,000 jobs are about to be cut. Now, there's plenty of people out there, Graham, are now saying we are watching the electric vehicle bubble burst. Is that fair?
Well, it's probably a little bit early to make that call. I think what we're seeing is that the industry is not inflating at the rate that people had expected. That includes government and that includes the car makers. So we're at a fairly precarious point at which the major manufacturers are not meeting their sales targets. Others are starting to pull back on the manufacturer, which is all going to be bad for the second-hand market, which is all then going to be bad for the electric vehicle market going forward. Where things go from here is going to determine whether electric vehicles do become the dominant form of transport. And the evidence is that consumers are starting to do the bigger calculations about the footprint and the utility of this form of transport, and nothing's for sure.
Not at all. And then you add in the fire risk and more. Graham, thank you for your time as always.